I call this meeting of the Capital Planning Committee to order. Let's begin with a roll call vote. Heath, aye.
Wait, aye.
Chris, aye.
All right. Just give me a moment to keep up with my notes here. All right, announcements. This meeting is being recorded. Anyone intending to make an audio or video recording of this meeting should notify the chair at this time. All right, this committee still has a vacancy for a Kingston resident. If you or anyone else that you know may be interested, please reach out to Kingston's Finance Committee. You can reach them by email at fincom@kingstonma.gov. That's FINCOM@kingstonma.gov. You hear that, Carl?
Yes,
Good.
I'll make the same announcement Wednesday night.
Great, thank you. Does anyone else have any announcements? All right, hearing none, I'm going to, for the moment, skip over the capital improvement and financial updates part. Keith is running to his office to send you by email an updated document that we'll probably be discussing during the meeting. I'm going to skip ahead just for a moment then to discuss some meeting minutes that I had on the agenda. The minutes from the last meeting are not quite complete yet. I put minutes from meetings that we attended, 2 annual town meetings and 2 special town meetings. I don't know if we'll get to those tonight. In the past, I didn't think we had to provide minutes when we attended town meetings, but I asked the clerk, someone in the clerk's office, how we flowed those out on the website so that they look like we're not missing minutes. They said the best thing to do is submit something saying what happened. So I have documents for those. I sent them out to you guys by email ahead of the meeting. I have a printout to share with Wayne when the time comes, but we may not get to that tonight. So I don't think there's really a rush because I'm not sure those minutes even really qualify as minutes, but we'll find out. All right. Other than the appointments we have, I don't know if there's anything else to discuss until Keith gets back. So let's see, where we left off last time, discussing the fire engines. I'll try to give the fire engine replacement. I'll try to give the updates as far as I know. We had taken votes on supporting the use of ARPA funds to replace, not to replace, but to add a bidirectional amplifier to get radio signal.
That's not what it is.
In building repeater.
Nope. It's a configuration that goes on within the enclosure at the Pembroke Street Water Tower, which is where our second radio site is. It is in lieu of or instead of a bidirectional amplifier in the building.
Oh, okay. No. Do we have? There's another motion on that tonight. I'll need that.
We got a copy of, I emailed a copy of that.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for. Where is it? It's actually, is it on the industrial communications page?
What?
The actual name of the product or the project?
Project would be radio upgrades,
Okay, radio upgrades.
radio system upgrade across top of the first page.
Radio, public safety radio system upgrade, okay. All right, and a Chevy Tahoe with a trailer to transport a comfort dog for the police department. As it looks now, the ARPA funds will not come through for those. And on the document Keith has distributed to us, it looks like we're pursuing those at town meeting through capital appropriations. Keith, would you like to give all the, I mentioned about the ARPA funds.
So after the last capital planning meeting,
I did verify with the county treasurer that the ARPA deadline had been extended from September 30th to October 24th, which means if there is ARPA funds available, they will not be available, and they'll not make an announcement to any of the communities that are seeking additional ARPA funds till sometime after the 25th. The town of Kingston has submitted project funding requests for the radio upgrades, as well as the Comfort Dog vehicle. In speaking to the treasurer, he was not confident that there'd be a significant amount of ARPA money that had been turned back to the county by communities that couldn't spend their funding. And I think, as we mentioned in here at your last meeting, my thought was, worst case scenario, we show it in the warrant, and if we're fortunate enough to have ARPA funding come through, then we just can either modify the article or, potentially just bypass it completely if at all possible. So what I have proposed to you this evening is similar to what I gave to the Capital Planning Committee for the annual town meeting. The article, in this case, will be one article that the Capital Planning Committee, I think, needs to focus on. That's in the packet of information that's in front of you tonight. There's a request for 5 potential capital items. There's a combination of funding sources that will be used. If ARPA does not come through, the proposal to use free cash for the radio upgrades, the police vehicle acquisition, and the playground repairs. I was given a couple of projects. One project and one other warrant article that this committee doesn't have to deal with. It was prior year invoices that I've added to the warrant. But the school department, as I think everybody's aware, has had some issues with the elementary school playground. They approached the community preservation committee a week or two ago, seeking a grant from that committee. They chose to not want to fund something at the fall town meeting. So they, at this point, have turned the school department down for their funding request. So I received an article late this morning, from the school business administrator and the superintendent, seeking, in this case, $76,000 to make improvements and repairs to the elementary school playground to allow for that playground to be reopened during the school year as quickly as possible.
Could I note that I'm a member of the CPC committee, and we encourage the schools to reapply for the grant for the $76,000 for the normal go-round, so that it would be one of the items that we would consider prior to the regular May town meeting.
Can I add to that? Anyone can correct me if I'm wrong. If that goes to annual town meeting, the funds will not be available until July. Whereas if it goes through on special town meeting, they would have the funds immediately.
No, I guess typically I'd say yes, but if this group, and Mr. Pike recalls last spring, there was a separate article on the annual town meeting warrant for well replacement at Opachinski, and it was proposed for fiscal 24, with the hope that if it was approved in May, we wouldn't have to wait till July 1st to get the funding in place and get those wells installed and operational sometime in the summertime. So any damage that the sun or the dryness may cause those fields could be mitigated to some degree with the new wells. The wells have not gone online yet. We have one new well sunk. We have a second one that I think is just about done. And they'll be doing some testing in the near future to get those wells operational. But typically, You're absolutely correct. It's July 1st is the time you can start spending. If they brought forward.
Let me modify
I'm
my
sorry.
statement.
Yes, sir.
If an appropriation was made from free cash, they would have those funds available immediately following special town meeting.
In this case, yes, and the same thing in the spring.
I just wanted everyone to
Yep.
be on the same page
Yep.
that the CPC is certainly a different situation than this.
Is this the playground that we spoke about last week, that the discoloration was just normal wear and tear,
That
this is a different?
just one of the issues, yeah, but Tricia and I went out and visited the playground with, I believe it was a representative of the manufacturer, the designer who designed the preschool playground, the facilities manager for the Silver Lake Regional Schools, and one of the custodial staff for the Kingston Elementary building. I believe that was everyone correct? So I gave you a description of what I saw, thinking that we were probably going to hear about it again. Sorry, Keith, go ahead.
No,
So the original contract, they built it last week, the last week meeting said that there was, probably had another 8 years of
Well,
life.
what he said was 8 to 10, I believe. He
Right,
said
but
in
you've been
5
already in
years, they
8.
should begin planning to fundraise its replacement. But he was willing to certify it to the end of its anticipated service life based on what he saw. In the inspection report, he said he did not agree with. And he said there are some repairs that need to be made and he would provide a quote. And I think that's where the number we have comes from.
Correct, that does, and it addresses, it brings the playground up to code, and it, it certifies that the surfaces and are safe for the kids to play on. So platforms are to be replaced and chains are to be replaced, and then the wood chips that are on the ground are leveled out.
Thank you.
so, so this is the article that you guys are dealing with, and if I could just go through it real quickly, I think both chiefs have had conversations with some or all of you about the radio upgrades, this radio upgrade, and Mark can talk about this in amazing detail. But what the issue is that they're having some challenges. Police and fire are having challenges communicating over the radio with other police and fire officers in certain parts of town. But there's also the primary issue, very candidly, is that there are dead spots or weakened radio signals within the Silver Lake High School that makes it impossible in some locations to communicate by radio, which it creates, not to over dramatize things, but creates a safety issue for the public safety officials who are responding, and also provides a safety issue for the kids. There was a couple of different options I think that they could have gone with. Our local radio expert, Chief Douglas, is suggesting that the radio upgrades that would be mounted on the tower, nearby water tower, would improve communications within the school, plus address some of the weak spots in parts of town that are currently existing for police and or fire in those spots. So this would be a one-time cash purchase. We've spent up to $400,000, I think, on radio equipment over the last few years. $600,000, all of which was from other funding sources other than general funds. The new radio waves are causing some problems within the schools in other parts of town that could not be reasonably anticipated.
I believe it's picking up a television station from New Jersey. Is that what we're saying?
Yes,
Television station is blowing out.
Yeah.
It's operating on a much lower wattage. I don't speak fluent like Chief Douglas, but radio.
So radio people call interference when you're picking up another frequency.
so, again, I'm not trying to over dramatize anything. And I know every one of our capital items are needed, but this is something critical. This puts kids and public safety officials in danger or at risk.
I painted a scenario of what I imagine could be a bad instance in the school if their radios can't talk.
Yep.
Last time.
Unfortunately, we've had, you turn on the TV far too often and see something going on someplace that, and the interviews that people have are all say the same thing. I can't believe it happened here. So unfortunately, when we're looking at steel door replacements, we're having to look at spec steel doors that are bullet resistant. where something that I never would have expected, and, you know.
It might resist some bullets, but not proof against some others.
We can get into that long lengthy
No, it's
discussion.
kind of like with watches, water resistant versus waterproof.
Sure.
They don't want to put a guarantee on everything, okay?
So that's the first item. The second is the engine that Chief Douglas has presented. Again, he can speak to this far greater than I can. The plan was a year ago, as we sat here, to bring forward the engine in the spring of 2026. I'm sorry, I'm thinking of what year I'm in. Spring of 2025 at the annual town meeting. However, the time it's going to take between date of order and date of delivery is now increased to over 3 years. Which, if Chief Douglas looks at his replacement schedule, his replacement schedule indicates that the need to replace that engine in the spring of 27. If we don't do it, if this isn't brought forward in the fall, you're looking at sometime later on in 2027, possibly it's 2028 to get that built. So that's the issue there. I certainly understand where Mr. Pike is coming from, and I don't disagree with it in normal circumstances, but we're gonna have to reorder the next one. We should probably place the order for the next one. I think we get delivery on this one, by the way things are going.
There's a point to be made about when we sat at the COA last year and had our budget advisory committee meeting. The consensus was we would continue to maintain as a level services town. And we applied that, we said that applies to capital. So I think you have to sometimes ask yourself in making decisions, are these replacements? Are they new? Are they repairs or something to something existing, like the playground we're talking about a repair, the radio upgrades? We expect those radios that we acquired already to penetrate the building. And they're not consistently anyway. So, if we're talking about, well, should they always go to annual town meeting, large financial purchases? I think there's something worth debating there as to whether a replacement necessarily falls under that category versus saying, hey, we want to add an engine to the fleet. I mean, we'll have that conversation when we get to it.
Yeah, and Chief Douglas and I had that conversation, as you and I, on a couple of occasions in the last couple of weeks. I mean, basically, the concern is, without looking at all of the capital at once, what don't we know of? I feel pretty confident that the capital items that have been projected out fiscal 26 in last year's capital plan, we can address and satisfy the needs of those capital items with the remaining availability of free cash. The challenge is there something new that wasn't on fiscal 26's capital plan that we don't know of? So we've got $2.5 billion, and I've got this sheet. I think it's the last sheet. It's in this attachment, second to last sheet. I apologize. Just to give you a sense of where we are free cash wise. So free cash was certified at just under $2.5 million. The public safety radios for 159, the police vehicle for 75, and then the school playground for 76, leaves a balance of 2.1 million. The goal, I think, in the past has been of the finance committee and the board of selectmen has been to try to keep between $1 and $1.5 million in free cash, unreserved, so to speak.
When you got to that number, the 2.1,
Mhm.
you included that was the radio upgrades, the police vehicle. Did you include the playground?
I did.
Yeah.
It's if you flip the page, I think it's on the next page.
Oh, okay.
So you've got just under $2.2 million before applying any monies towards the potential acquisition of that engine truck. We talked about, I think, already reallocating the $400,000 that was previously going to be allocated to the last two lease payments of the ladder truck. And in doing that, the purpose in doing that was the lease interest rate on the lease for the ladder truck is 2%. The interest rate on a lease for The engine, just to give you a sense, is over double that. It's 5.64%. So the thought that the chief had, which was a good one, was let's use that $400,000 to pay down this engine. So we're going from $1,087,000 to
680.
680 is the balance that we need. And how do we deal with that? I think as much as I'd love to use $680,000 and pay cash out of free cash, I'm maybe getting more like Mr. Pike in my older age, but I'm trying to be a little more conservative. I think using $680,000 in October, not knowing what we're gonna be looking at for capital needs in May, I think is a little too aggressive for my taste. And would suggest, Mark and I talked a little bit today, where would I want to be? If we took $280,000 out of free cash and financed $400,000.
Yep.
And again, that would allow us to order the truck. We wouldn't have to pay for it. We would be a lot, we at that point, if we went in that direction, we wouldn't have to pay anything for it. We wouldn't get the discount because we wouldn't be paying everything for it.
So what we can do if we do a lease is they'll pay 100% upfront. We'll get the $37,000 discount for 100% upfront payment. Your first payment of 355 plus minus payments will start in 26. So you'll pay at the end of the day, about $27,000 in fees and interest over the actual net cost, if you will, of the truck. So the 37 takes a big bite out of the interest, and the lease company will pay that as 100% upfront.
Now, can I ask a question here? We had talked about the 400,000 plus the free cash of about 600, just over 600,000, I thought. And the treasurer's gonna put in a bond, which he estimated we would earn 66,000 on, and that would be paid upon receipt of the engine. With this 400,000 plus that was from the tower reserve, plus the $282,769 be combined into a similar bond so we could earn interest in the meantime.
It'd be invested somehow with any earnings in that investment being applied to the acquisition of that engine. So,
And
yes,
that payment, the 3-year lease at $155,022. My quick math here on what I expected we'd be paying on leases in fiscal year 26 to bring us up just about to $905,000.
so my concern is timing of the leases. I would like, and that's that's the challenges that we're looking at. I've got a financing problem in 25 and 26 that I've got to try to deal with. So it might make sense to push out the lease to 27.
You see you have a financing problem?
I have liquidity issues in our capital stabilization fund. That I want to make sure I've got the money in a stabilization fund to pay the leases that are already committed for. So if what I'd like to work with the dealer and or financing company on is having some flexibility as to when the first payment will be due, and if we had a better than average free cash year and wanted to apply, $200,000-$300,000 of free cash a year from now or a little more than a year from now to reduce that lease, that we could do that, I suppose, and just make a lease payment on free cash. But I'd like to have a little flexibility, I guess. If this group is interested in, supporting the acquisition of the engine, like I said, I think that we could use the 400,000 that's already sitting in the bank. If we use another $282,000, you'd have a balance of $400,000. And between now and when we've got lock down what we are financing wise, it'd be nice to have a little flexibility to be able to work with, like I said, either the manufacturer or the financing company to get a better sense of where we're gonna be. Like 3 years down the road, when we finally get the truck.
It's a lot to take in, because what I see is if we don't lease anything, we go from about $750,000 in payments in fiscal year 26 down to 730 in 27. We drop to 575 in fiscal year 28. And we take a big dip down to about 183 in fiscal year 29. But to put that into perspective, if we're looking at the existing CIP, 5-year CIP, we have an ambulance number 3, which will, if it's refurbished, will probably be, well, I had to guess based on what we paid in the past, probably 300 something thousand for, and the original estimate to replace it outright is 525,000. That would be fiscal year 27. That was the original year we planned to order engines, or move to approve the funding to order an engine 3. Fiscal year 28 is a Vector truck that last time we talked about it was 660,000. Every time we talk about them, we have a new estimate. It jumps by another 6 figures. It'll be $1 million truck by fiscal year 28 or 29, depending on when we move to add that. And that'll be a lease. The ambulance 3 might not be either way. You know, and we're concerned about the capital stabilization fund too, so.
Again, we talked about potentially having another meeting next week if you guys want some time to soak this in. I was trying to provide, and Mark was, and all of us we're trying to provide you information in written form that you guys can digest, understand, and you know, happy to come back next week if we need to and try to work through this. I understand it's a lot to digest, talking about a lot of money. I respect that. You know, Carl shared with you where he thinks that, where he's going to suggest the finance committee goes. Again, this group can have a completely different recommendation. So, you know, it's up to you guys where you want to go, but that's what we have for potential options, I guess, is all I'm trying to suggest for you right now.
Can I ask some questions on the current truck? It's a diesel, right?
Yep.
So that's good for 300,000 miles. How's the undercarriage?
That's an assumption for an over-the-road truck.
Right,
Sure.
right.
It's not, we don't have an over-the-road truck, but go ahead.
How's the undercarriage of that? How's the frame?
Good,
Any electrical problems?
yes.
Well, what's going on there?
It's a 2004 multiplex system. It has its hiccups here and there. Is it gonna die tomorrow? Absolutely not.
And the devil in the detail is that it's 3 years out to get a new truck.
Right.
That's the whole problem.
Also had transmission issues.
Yeah, it's a new transmission, so I'm comfortable with that. 3 years from now, is that truck gonna be in dire need of replacement? 3 years from now, yeah. Today, as we speak, no.
No.
That's really this is all about 2 things. One is the time to get a truck and the price increases between now and then. If you, I hate to say it this way, sound like used car salesman. If you sign on the dotted line now, so to speak, it locks in the price at $1,080,000. You'll see on what I sent you this afternoon, you're looking at a January price increase of $48,634. And you can expect at least that or more annually from here on out.
What would happen between January and assuming an annual town meeting in May? Would they have another price increase then, or is it only in January?
January to May, the price increase, it would be unlikely that they do a price increase between January and May. July, potentially, because they've been doing them every 6
So
months.
that they could institute that before we had a chance to scratch an order pattern.
Absolutely, yeah. That's the 2 reasons I brought this, not because I don't disagree with Carl. I think all this stuff should go and be considered in one lump. But when you get into a $50,000 price increase and a 3-year out delivery time, I mean, it's something you absolutely have to look at. And the $50,000 is what bothers me the most, because that's going to be the increments. They go up, it's $50,000. And if they go up in June and we can't order it till July, because that's your funding, if you go to an annual town meeting, you stand the potential for another 4.5%. Is it going to happen? I don't know the answer to that. Depends on how Rev manages things. Some of the apparatus industry now has become publicly held companies, which makes that dynamic a little bit different than it used to be. Smeal is an example. E1 used to be essentially privately owned, but now they're publicly traded. So, and they're owned by a holding company. So you know what that's about? That's about profit, period, end. So that's what drives some of these price increases. There's not a whole lot of, I don't want to say mom and pops, but the smaller manufacturers out there now that make this kind of vehicle, and you just don't. So you're stuck, in Pierce manufacturing in Wisconsin is having even greater price increases than this. So that's why I brought it forward. It was an opportunity to potentially save some money on what we're gonna need anyway.
And they're all doing this,
Doing what?
raising the prices.
Oh, good, yeah.
So they're, it's
And they're
not,
all 3 years out.
and then, so
Oh, yeah.
there's no
can
no
go-
competitive model here.
No, there's no such thing as competition right now. The only thing is you can either buy a PS that's outrageous money, or you can buy something in the Rev Group that's high-end not Cadillac, high-end Chevy, if you will, so to speak. And you're paying a little less money. Pierce, you pay for the name, it's like a car. And Pierce is 25% more.
And just a quick question on the radios, because you're the radio guy.
Lucky me.
We spent some money on these the last few years.
Yep.
This will solve the problem. I mean, communication is the key. You gotta be able to talk to people.
I said this when we, there's never a guarantee. This is the best option we have to solve the problem. Unless you wanted to go into the schools, school specific, and do BDAs in every single school, which is $100 plus minus $1,000 each school. And then you're as close to a guarantee as you're gonna get. Nothing's 100%.
In the enclosure that this unit will sit in, it's pretty solid. I mean, it's.
Yeah, it's an HVAC enclosure, so it's heated, ventilated, air conditioned. Yep. The history on that system, just to touch base, we've done several upgrades along the way. I don't know if you guys remember Kingston Emergency Management when it was specific to the power plant. And they used to give us about a $60,000 grant every year, about 65. So what I did when I became chief is to start this project is we did a 3-year lease for about $109,000. And we moved we bought a bunch of new infrastructure and we moved it, we installed it at that tank, at the water tank on Pembroke Street. And then we modernized our infrastructure that sits at Monks Hill in the Industrial Communications Building. So that was the foundation of what we started to build on. Some repeaters, but not all. And as we've moved forward, we've used CARES, ARPA, and those types of grants. EMPG, I've used emergency management planning grants to upgrade the system to the tune of about 600 and off the top of my head, either $14,000 or $34,000 worth of equipment. I did not anticipate these problems. The chief and I have had conversations ad nauseum with the radio company. A lot of it is environmental issues. There's been some changes in town. They ran a big power line through. We can't blame it specifically on that, but just the environmental changes alone. The FCC has allowed T-band, which is the police frequency, the TV band. They've allowed higher power TV stations or TV transmitters, so which is screwing up T-band. So there's been a lot of changes between the environment and what's allowed on the within the radio systems by the FCC. The FCC is trying to push everybody to 800 trunking, which is incredibly expensive, but the Northeast is the last holdout. So that's what we don't have without spending millions, the opportunity to do 800 right now. This conversation can go on forever because radios are about as deep as you can get in technical conversations. But
His entire hobby dedicated to it.
yeah, and I didn't, I will tell you, myself and the radio folks did not expect what we're seeing now, to the extent that we're seeing it. We did some tests in the high school 3 years ago, give or take. You had a couple of areas that were iffy, sketchy, but nothing like this. So the only thing that we can attach it to is environmental or changes in the community, which would be a power line or something like that that was created on the structure. It's unfortunately not a perfect.
So as soon as something happens, the sun has a solar flare or a solar cycle, those waves in certain bands don't always, I don't know if it's applicable to this, but in some bands, it reduces its ability to propagate over the surface of the earth properly. you have something like electrical or a strong signal coming from someplace else, you have interference, electrical interference, signal interference. There's all kinds of little factors that go in, and it just turns out what would otherwise be a nice signal and it's static. Waves of fading in and fading out and everything else. I mean, like I said, I don't know if that applies here. I don't use that kind of radio.
Very much applies here.
And the people in the radio world have been complaining for 10 years that the sun cycle that's currently in is disrupting reception.
12-year cycles, they say it goes in.
So it's frying the ionosphere, basically.
My single biggest concern right now is these guys. I mean, firefighters will tend to stop, transmit. They do functions a little slower in that sense, the way we work. You picture these guys chasing somebody, they're running by obstructions, clear signal, obstruction, clear signal. And when your portables are trying to lock on, because that's essentially how it works. It's making a contact with the radio system and it's broken. Without the power to work around that, or with a weak signal, it's brutal. And it's extremely dangerous for these folks. Frankly, a little more so than us. It's the way we all operate. It's just what we do. But it's super concerning to me. I'm very worried. I don't want them, in any case. They've already had one issue where they were chasing a suspect and couldn't make radio contact. That's just unacceptable to me.
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fairly decided on that. I had a problem with I was thinking for some reason that the radio upgrade would be mounted in the school system, and that therefore, if we ever, like you went through and you're on the school committee with Pembroke, if anything divided, we would be assessed to pay off, even though we had put it there. And shouldn't they pay their fair share to have it installed? But this is going out on the water tower, right? It's not part of the facility.
So conversation with Keith today is, I think it's prudent to still request it from the county. I think that's the conversation we had. But this is the backup plan. I think it's the best way to put it.
Yeah, I mean, again, this is an issue. We aren't gonna know where the county is until this warrant's posted. In a perfect world, we can get the town meeting and pass over.
Is there any, I mean, aside from the fact that we have a request from the schools, we don't even have a price on for tonight. We'll get to that a little bit further in discussion. Is there any need for us to vote this stuff tonight, knowing that changes could happen yet again?
No, I mean, the warrant closes tomorrow, so.
But this is all included, so we don't have to concern ourselves with. You already have placeholders, is what I mean.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay.
So unless there's another article that comes forward or another request that comes forward, which I don't expect, if the school got their stuff over today, so they were the last department that I've heard from, so, the only thing that would change on this is, if something came off for some reason. But I don't know if that's gonna happen at this point. But you don't need to vote. I mean, I don't think you need to vote tonight. If you're not comfortable doing that, that's absolutely fine. Just to give you a sense of schedule, the board of selectmen meets tomorrow night to close the warrant. I'm hoping that, so the finance committee meets Wednesday night. They're gonna start talking about the articles that they have some responsibility to review and make recommendations on. The board of selectmen meets on the 22nd of October. At that point, I'm hoping the FinCom may have decided where they are, because the board of selectmen they typically like to hear where the finance committee is and what votes they've taken before they vote. So I'm hoping before October 22nd, the finance committee will vote on the articles that they have some responsibility for. So, from my point of view, I'd love you to, if you wanted to wait until next week to vote these, I think that's fine. Beyond that, I think we may have, the FinCom, for example, may want to see how you voted on the articles that you're bringing forward. So,
Some members may want to, and some members may say, don't care.
that's right. That's right. So, if you want to meet again next week and give yourself some time to kind of digest this stuff.
But we did that before, and then
Well,
We waited, now we have a bigger can of worms to deal with.
and
But-
again, the warrant closes tomorrow, so could something come out of the sky? Stranger things have happened.
You want me to think of something? I'm game.
I think you've been incredibly creative so far. Thank you. You know, the one issue, and I appreciate the school committee member being here, we talked a little bit, you know, what the school, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, the Kingston School Committee is looking for is between 15 and 45,000.
60. I'm just not sure.
Yep, so, and this isn't to fund the capital improvement, this is to do the due diligence, I guess, to come up with a scope of work that could be proposed potentially to the town in the spring.
Is that for the roof and windows?
Roof, windows, and doors.
So they're not actually coming to us for the full amount.
No, they look, so what you're looking at is no more than 60,000, could be a little bit less than that. So there's no number on there right now, but what I've been told is at some point in the next week or so, we should hope to have a number we'll include in that, but, it's not gonna be for the bonding of the project at this point.
Okay, what about the, and this may not be the exact right time to ask, but you and I discussed it, I don't know if you gave me the exact answer, the windows and screens for KIS. I know we discussed it, but I don't know. Are they still needing more, another approval for those?
So I apologize. There was $100,000 approved for
For the doors?
the end, but that was amended at town meeting for the envelope.
But to say as per the envelope, not, it didn't necessarily say for anything.
In particular, which means the envelope. So if they wanted to use some or all of that $100,000 towards windows and or screens, they could do that.
Okay, so that's because after we looked at the playground, I talked to the school's facilities manager and he said, I don't think we can do it with the language in the warrant. I said, there was an amendment. It might open it up. I don't know, but I can't interpret that without, you know, I think either yourself or the
Yeah, no,
town council should.
I had forgotten about that as well, and then the superintendent reminded me that there was an amendment for the envelope itself, so. Watch yourself. Yeah. I think that, so the language allows for, you know, any capital improvement on school property. I think is
Okay.
it's very, very broad. Which I think is what the intent was, when they brought that amendment forward.
How you doing, Chris? Any thoughts, any questions?
Nothing specific. We've obviously bounced around back and forth, so just keeping up as best I can.
Okay. And are we prepared to move on to the schools or is there?
Yeah, I apologize. I probably should have the school first. I didn't think, so I apologize.
Do we need to talk about police vehicles some more? I know we covered it last time, but,
Not that I'm aware of. Nothing's changed.
okay. All right then, schools. So we have the playground repairs. And it sounded like doing some kind of assessment for the roof and windows. So where would like to start?
So if I could, the playground, I think everybody's heard about the playground, the challenges that they're facing with that. They did go to community preservation, seeking alternative funding. And community preservation thought that it was more appropriate to come back in the spring, similar to the argument or the comment that was made about the fire truck. Bring it in, we'll lump it in with all the other community preservation applications, and if it rises to the top, then it'll get funded. You know, I think the challenge for that with the school is the quicker they can get it done, the quicker they can get that playground opened up again. And I think that's probably the basis for them coming and trying to get something in fall town meeting rather than waiting for next spring.
Right, we want the kids to be back out. There's 200 kindergartners. It's a huge class, and we just want the kids to be able to be on the playground playing, and that's the time is of the essence type project. I will say that there's a parent group that is actively pursuing some funding to try to help to offset some of that cost. Don't know how that's going to shake out before the town meeting, but that is, you know, there is that huge you know, a lot of energy behind
Mm.
trying to get this playground back on board this year. I don't know, Carrie's on here. She had anything to add to that?
Am I allowed to add anything?
Absolutely.
Okay, all right. I apologize because I'm at the hockey rink and they just got off the ice, so it's loud.
Hmm.
We are working to see if we can allocate some fundings through our budget as well. But we will need to discuss that at the next school committee for approval. So on top of what, just said, there may be some other funding. And we do have some other possible funding as well through CAFE and PTO.
So one of my thoughts that I'll just bring up is that I understand, and I've got one of those kindergartners in the school. If you take the path of, if we go to capital, we get funds, we mix that with some other funding, there's still a capital appropriation there that, if you want to look at it this way, could have been funded by CPC potentially. But they rejected it once. We don't know what happened on the round two. If it's in capital and we use funds towards that, something else that would have gone to some other capital is no longer available for that. So the question is, if you're looking at within a department, what other school things did we have? And I think we had a tractor for $38,000. I think it was for both schools to maintain the grounds. $200,000 generator for KES. With some air duct cleaning at KIS for 35, but I don't know if I consider that to be capital or not.
Are you looking at the,
The fiscal year 26, which is where I think it pretty much ends for us. We don't have anything for the rest of the 5 year for schools listed yet. And then some shed work at KIS for 35,000. So it's that plus all the other departments. So if it goes, you know, in this situation, we're robbing Peter to pay Paul. So I just wanted to put that out there. I mean, I'm supportive of getting the kids back on the playground. If we pay for it, something else we can't pay for.
Well, and candidly, we there's nothing else being requested, and again, it's more of a, in a perfect world, we wouldn't have anything requested for funding in our fall town meeting. So I don't think this is competing in the fall for funding. If there's an opportunity to amend the article to reduce it by whatever the other funding sources may be that come forward before November, you know, a motion could be made to reduce that $76,000 to something less than that, and allow for those funds to carry over to the spring and apply those funds to another capital project.
And I would say, just to keep in mind, this perspective on the project, when they're going to get their playground one way or the other, they're going to get several hundred people at town meeting, and they'll find a way to get a playground. Whether it's we're fixing it or the manufacturer said on site 600 to 800,000 to replace it. So I'm certainly in favor of repairing versus replacing, since it has 8 to 10 years left on it. You're thinking something, aren't you?
I think we have to. I think that's a valid request.
So the playground currently, it was a 30-year playground. I think it's on year 22. By looking at it, the manufacturer said 8 to 10 is left on it. But in 5 years, you should start planning on replacing it. And to which I said, get the PTO and the school committee and whoever else on it now to start raising funds now and sell everyone that a brick for their family name or their business or whoever the donors are, like we did for the preschool. Another playground will go in very similar for 30 years, and it will be required to have the rubber matting. Won't be able to use what they call the engineered wood fibers, which are special wood chips, very special wood chips. And those rubber mats will last 15 years, so we'll have to replace those in between. And there'll be at least 2 large sections of rubber mats. That's something that, you know, I'd like to repair it and put that one down the road while it's still got a good 8 to 10 years left on it. But like I said about level services before, we expect to have a playground for the kids at the school. And right now, because of the initial inspection report, which I don't believe was accurate at all, they've got a safety fence around it and they cut the swings off the swing set. And I understand why people want to see it reopened.
I think that going this way, that would allow us to get those kids back on the ground. You know, immediately, just being able to order the materials and get it back out there.
I mean, I said on the playground, I said, if you come to us for a replacement, it's what we spend in cash every year, let alone our lease commitments. We're not gonna buy a playground out of a capital appropriation like that. It would have to be some other funding source.
Right.
So it becomes more complicated. It's much better to just fix it.
Has one of the schools finally made the state's list for roof replacement or to be looked at, or?
Yeah, so that was.
That's the other topic.
That's the next topic.
So the last thing we talked about in this one particular article is the dock replacement, $60,000 coming from the waterways funds, was not coming from free cash or anything capitalized. They're funding that themselves. So I just want to maybe finish that article before we jump to the other one. Any questions on that? That's nothing.
No, I mean, I just, the way I see that is that this one article probably has multiple motions.
Well, it'll have a motion to, we can create a motion that would probably hit everything. If we have to have two, we can have two, but we'll work with council to get the necessary motions crafted. Kate's very good.
Okay, well, if
Okay.
you want to move on.
So the other articles is Article 3 on the warrant, and I received that today from the school as well. In doing some due diligence and speaking to the vice chair of the Kingston School Committee, what the school committee is looking for is funding to do some preliminary work, identify a scope, identify an estimated cost. There's two factors that may have to be in place, so if only one, it has to be funded, that would be funded with around $15,000. If both of the items have to be funded, that would come in at closer to $60,000. The school committee has applied for Massachusetts School Building Authority funds. The expectation is that a decision on which projects they're gonna fund is gonna come somewhere around the end of October. So there may be an opportunity. I think they're funding up just over 50% right now.
Right.
For projects. Hopefully we'll get that grant, and that would reduce our costs significantly. But what would happen either way is, if we appropriate, just say for argument's sake, $60,000 for the school to do the scoping of the work. I assume in the spring, at the Springtown meeting, there would be an article coming forward to request the necessary funding to or make repairs, or it's not replacing the roof, and it's not making patches to the roof. It's something. I apologize.
Well, we're talking about
Refurbishment.
the flat areas where they were able to use this polyurethane-based material. But I think some of the gable roofs, they had to strip off the asphalt shingles. At least that, I think that was a discussion we had before. So the roofing material, they're not the roof decking wouldn't necessarily be replaced, but the roofing material on one side would be replaced in the areas, and the other area in sections, this refurbishment would be applied.
Is that the white roll-on material?
Yeah, I think
Be
so.
very cautious with that. We did that at Pembroke Street Fire Station. It was poorly prepared and it's awful.
Can you email us the name of the product? Do we have any records of it?
I can try to find something, but
Or even the company that made it, because we had, and it's probably recording of it, a sales engineer from the manufacturer come on to describe it to us about 2 years ago.
the prep was the key and it was prepped poorly. And it's been, that roof is in desperate.
So
need of
that could be the
replacement.
contractor who was sort of the middleman.
Again, just be
Yeah.
cautious. That's all I'm saying. We had a bad experience with it. So if it needs to be prepped and somebody needs to inspect it before they apply the material.
We have one of the
do
top
that.
roofing engineers in the country who lives right here in town.
Give them a call.
So, I think what you'd see is you'd see an amount of no more than $60,000 is the impression I get. It's gonna be in Article 3. Looking to do, determine what the scope of the work is gonna be. for the doors, the windows, and refurbishment of the roof, which may include replacing some stuff and may include refurbishing some things. That's what they are gonna be hired to determine. So, much less than I anticipated when I first got the article this morning, collecting millions of dollars, so I'm thrilled.
One thing that I'd like to add is that the finance committee will certainly be looking at a little bit of the history here. Because it was, 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago that this first came up. That we had to replace the roof on the elementary school. And at that time, I'm not sure, but I want to research, did we do some funding then to do this study? Okay, and I'm not sure, but we certainly should, I know we had estimates. If I can remember an estimate of $4 million plus in total. And so, I think that, we'll be interested in finding some of that history that is not too old.
No, I
3, 4
agree.
years.
I think the difference, and correct me if I'm wrong, is we had estimates done, and I remember $2 million for the intermediate school and $2 million for the elementary school. And then we got a chance to walk around the school roofs, and learn about school roofs. The impression I have is if we don't get funding through the MSBA, right, that right?
That's correct.
This scope of work is required by them.
This is.
So
part
if
of
we
the
get,
grant.
if we get funded by a grant through MSBA, they're gonna say, you need to do this. So we know so the scope of the work is identified with theirs, and then we can go out to bid. So while I think we have some estimates from just a couple of years ago, I don't know that that's gonna meet the expectations or the specifications that MSBA is gonna require. They have a specific form that I think they're gonna need us to follow, to get whatever estimates on the work that needs to be done. So there is some history here, there's no question about it. I think hopefully, we're gonna be fortunate enough to get a grant, and it'll be money well spent.
So one of the things I think, based on what fire chief has told us, the roll-on product, which was a polyurethane base, I can't remember if it was white, but I think it probably was. So it shows pictures of them applying it to other structures. That was one facilities manager ago. So we have a new one, and I don't know if this assessment would address methods and so forth, but I'd be curious to know if that process we were talking about 2 years ago is still how they plan to refurbish it.
That's what the study is about, is they have a designer and a project manager that are looking at this condition of the roof, and they're gonna make their recommendations, and that's part of what the grant is about, is that it has to meet that criteria. It meets the criteria from an age perspective, but how they're gonna refurbish it is part of the program.
Yeah, because I don't want us to spend a bunch of money that they're going to grant to us and then have it be a, ridiculous project that fails in 2 years or something.
Do they also, do we have to take a core sample again? Didn't we do a core sample a couple of years ago?
Yeah,
Find out
right.
that-
I think there's been core samples taken up there in the past. Again, I can't speak. to
Will that
what-
be part of the 60 grand though, that they take a new
I
sample?
don't
Or
know.
I don't know if that would be, I'm just saying, like, they wanna study the roof, they wanna have their designer and evaluate what needs to happen.
So I guess I'd answer it this way. If they need to do a core sample to determine what the most appropriate repair is to that
Then
roof,
they'll
then
do
I'm
it.
sure they will. I just don't know what. And it may be different for every roof, frankly.
In this program, they have done several other roofs in the past 2 schools.
This might be one of those situations where waiting pays off. We were talking about a bond 2 years ago, right?
Can't wait much longer though.
It'll be $8 million this time around. Don't worry. How's your roof, chief?
I'm getting mine done Tuesday. Oh, you mean the one at the station? No,
Hopefully you're not gonna have to worry about a new roof on that building.
All right, any other questions about the school projects? All right, so I guess we'll have a little more discuss about when we have a price we can make a motion based upon. Anything else about the financing for the truck? Any concerns, anything like that?
One more time, I'd like to add comments. And I know that the finance committee and capital planning committee looks at the financing, funding mechanisms, et cetera. But to me, in the long run, what I encourage the finance committee is that we, the finance committee, need to make a decision on whether this $1 million fire engine needs to be replaced today. And that's our responsibility. And then it's up to the town administration, town administrator, and the treasurer to come up with how, in the direct finance director, to come up with how they're going to fund this $1 million expenditure. I don't see that as really being the responsibility of the finance committee or capital planning. I don't see any problem talking about it, et cetera, but I believe that operating management has the responsibility to determine in the final analysis what's best for the town in financing a particular expenditure.
Well, I would think that, where we're looking at a 5-year plan, how we fund it now has impacts down the road. So it's certainly something we have to discuss. And I think, generally, I look to them to advise how we should fund it. I'm going to be generally agreeable about that, but I would hate to see our capital plan turn into leases and something come up and we have no ability to pay for it in year because we have lease commitments.
And that's why I say I absolutely understand looking at it, talking about it, et cetera. But once it's approved by the capital planning committee and or the finance committee, if the town administration, including the treasurer and the director of finance, decided to totally change how that purchase was funded, do you think they need to come back to you?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know if I would answer that right now. But if we're voting on a warrant article and the language changed between when we voted on it and when we went to town meeting, I'd probably have a problem with it.
I would agree with that. Yes.
And I don't think this committee in the time I've been on has ever disagreed with what how the administration proposed. And when we're given options, we vote if that's what we're asked to do. So it really hasn't been a conflict up to now, and I don't see it going forward.
And I understand where you're coming from. Frankly, to me, it's winning the battle and losing the war. I don't think it makes any sense at all to bypass the expectations that were set by either FinCom, the Board of Selectmen, the Capital Planning Committee, or town meeting and go in a different direction. Sure, it's great that we do something that we thought was in the best interest of the community, but I would come back and say, here's what we'd like, we've got to change, and here's what we'd like to do, and get buy-in from everybody. Do I legally have to do it? I'm not really sure I do or don't. I think it's disingenuous if I don't.
It can cause other consequences, not
Yes, it
just
will.
among people on committees,
No.
but somebody who shows up to town meeting could get very loud and slow everything down.
Well, again, our lives are based on credibility. And if we do something like Carl just explains, we lose our credibility. And that it doesn't make sense.
I also think back to last year when we dealt with the highway department trucks.
Yep.
It was just an open conversation between everyone, and we tried to find out what we thought would be the best for operations and financial considerations. It was just an open discussion between everyone until we were settled. And we had a chance to reconsider, and it came up, and we decided not to. So we were all confident going forward. All right. Chris, you have anything? I want to make sure that you have a chance to be heard.
Nothing to add.
Okay. So I think we need another meeting then, so we can put all this stuff through. We have the final.
So just to
Prices.
give you a feel of what next week looks like. Monday's Columbus Day, but you guys want to meet? That's up to you.
Are you meeting this
Wednesday.
Wednesday or next?
He's meeting
Probably
both.
both.
But he's tied, so the FinCom is meeting 6 o'clock or 5:30 on Wednesday evening that next week. So you've got Tuesday night. If people wanted to get together on Tuesday night, hopefully that would be more convenient for your vice chair.
Tuesday, you said?
Yeah,
But then Thursday is our second option.
yes.
All right.
I need to double check, but this should be it.
All right.
You know Cal Pike, he'll be doing everything he can to get this whole warrant through on Wednesday night. But I'm only one member, so we'll see what the rest of the committee wants to do. And so we may not have to meet on the 16th.
So if you want to poll the board, whether they're available on Tuesday or Wednesday night next week, potentially having Wednesday open up, we can set, we can, we can post that agenda on Friday, as late as Friday, if we had to. If that's your, well, actually, we can't, because Monday we close, and it'd be Thursday, and the business Thursday. So whatever you're interested in doing, be happy to take whatever direction you want to give.
Say Monday. That means I could post tomorrow morning if you wanted to meet on Thursday this week. I don't know if everyone's available, but it's the earliest opportunity.
My only concern about meeting Thursday this week is I don't know how much time school needs to try to finalize what.
That's
their
right,
numbers
okay.
can be.
Okay.
Candidly. And if we can push it a week just to make sure we've got the, you know, as much time as we need to get that information, probably help.
Well, I think we should wait till we have final language and final costs. I think the finance committee should probably do that as well, but if he wants to ram it all through in one Wednesday night, that's up to him. I'll be on the phone to answer questions if I can be there.
What I'll do is just put $60,000. You check, you know, just you can tell me when you're ready.
Okay.
We'll just go worst case scenario.
Free cash. Probably,
Gonna have to be out. No one else.
but you did hear them say that they were also looking at their budget to do some funding for it.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I mean, if again, to me, you put 60,000 in, if they're able to come up with budget money or donations or some other gift that reduces that 60,000, then the FinCom and the capital plan can run on worst case scenario. If you're ready to do that, either this week or next. And if we can amend it at town meeting, we can do that. I don't know how else, I don't know if there's a better way of doing that. Hopefully it's like 15 grand.
Are you good for now?
I'm good.
You good for now, Chris?
Yes, indeed.
Okay, then I guess we'll meet again.
Okay, so we'll figure it
I'll
out.
try to do that as quickly as I can.
Well, we'll figure out a date. That's fine. I mean, I think it's either, if we can do it either.
Well, I'd like to be able to accommodate Mr. Cowett,
Yeah,
as
so
a
Tuesday
member
or
of
Tuesday or
both
Wednesday night would be great.
capital planning and the finance committee.
Yep.
And he's missed 2 meetings. I've sent him the recording of the last one. I'll send him this one. But I'd like to have him present. All right, with that, we have a motion. Close out the meeting.
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
So moved. All right, the time being, it says 7:16.
Well, I knew this was.
We have a motion, we have a second. All those in favor, Heath, aye.
Wayne, aye.
Chris, I.
All right, meeting's over.